Funke, hi.
Hi.
Nice to be on a panel with you. Is this a panel, by the way? I don't get it, but it's supposed to be a discussion,
Yeah,
right?
some sort of discussion, yeah.
And what better topic to talk about today than the topic of pitch and pitching?
Yes.
This for me is a topic that I don't know is very close to my heart because I've been doing pitching for a while now, both on agency side and on client side, but. So Funke, let's get into this. We're supposed to be sharing pitch stories and all the things that you should do and not do with pitching.
With pitching, yeah.
Which one strikes you?
I think even first we need to talk about like the pitch mindsets. Like typically, in the Marcom industry, like and I always say that there are two sides to it: the pitch mindsets of the clients and that's of the agency.
Yeah.
And the way I see it is, and I'm sure you probably disagree with me on some points. There are two types, especially on the client side. There are those who basically want to pitch because they want to see the creative capability of an agency. And there are some who basically put out pitches just to get information from agency. So they'll brief like 10 agencies and rather than pick a particular brief and say, treat this, they put all their brands in there, give me a plan for the year. As far as I'm concerned, I think that's just a way for them to gather information for their own purposes. They already know what they want to do.
Okay, at the risk of saying that you said you were going to be laughing just before we stepped into this recording, you were going to be laughing, yes. I'm sure that you get into the laughing bit, but I'll just give you a little bit of caveat because I'll be speaking both from the client perspective and the agency. So don't mind me when I go at it. Yes,
it's good. So at least you counter me when I'm the...
Because I might not agree with everything you say about the client, but let's shoot. So this is me thinking about pitching. Pitching is actually a very fantastic process. Like every business, whether it's a creative industry, you are doing sales or you are doing service, B2B, as it were, every business needs to pitch because it's the way in which you are assured of a regular inflow of business because your existing portfolio of clients, for one reason or the other, one of them, two of them, a couple of them might leave at some point in time. So pitching is actually the process that guarantees you that you have fresh inflow in terms of new business. And that's basically for creative agencies. They are what you call new business development plan. And so it's something you have to do. And as important as this particular process is in the life of agencies, we still find it very frustrating. What do you think? From my own perspective, I have a few ideas, but it would be nice to hear what would count for some of the things that you think become that frustration when you hear pitch on pitches.
Yeah. Like I said, I know that a lot of clients also do that. Some do every 3 years, every 2 years to just refresh and, get new hands on the business or even basically to keep the incumbent on their toes and see if, they can do better. And in most of these cases, like I mentioned earlier before you spoke, the mindsets from the agency side, especially when it is a business that they really need, or a business in an industry they've always wanted to play in, is what we call die there in some cases, So when it's a die there kind of situation, the agency usually goes above and beyond. And a smart agency will do their research, they'll do their background work as best as they can and as good as possible, because that is basically the only thing that will give them a leg up in doing what they need to do when the pitch comes up. And also, I think the relationship also plays a part because, especially in our country, whether in our industry or outside of it, who matters. How to play matters, because regardless of it, unless you are absolutely fantastic, your work can only get you so far. There are some bits where the relationship as well would help you actually take a step further and see, what you can get out of it. So it's a cutthroat when you see it, because a lot of times when we go for pitches, I actually see our colleagues from other agencies, and at that time, because you're all competing for the same thing, you're competing you're all dipping your hand in the same purse, and that's a whole process, as fantastic as it is, because at the end of the day, the way I see pitches is it's a new business, it's a new industry, it is an opportunity to learn, it's an opportunity to gain knowledge about something new. That's cutthroat competition between agencies.
Yeah.
It is. I once experienced a pitch where the whole team from the other agency came in the brand colors. Someone had their logo sprayed on their hair. It was so. It's always an opportunity to do something crazy and fun, and the clients usually enjoy it. Really, most of the time, they enjoy how far you are willing to go to see what you can do to get their business.
All right, interesting. I mean, I'll also like to talk a little bit about the pitching mindset. And I'll start a bit from, because I know we're going to get to the client side in terms of, how they should approach the pitch process. I think the pitching mindset is knowing what the pitch process really is. And I'll tell you the big lacuna for agencies in terms of the pitch mindset. Research actually shows that about 50% of agency personnel do not enjoy the pitch process. And what I've tried to do in my own introspection, talking to people usually, is that either the agency staff think that the agency is pitching too much, they are dipping their hands in too many pitches. And when that happens, people are going to get worn out, jaded, do you get? Or they even feel that there is no, it will shock you to find out that there are agencies where there is no clearly spelled out pitch process. There's no SOP for pitching. How do you start a pitch from 1 to 10? And so the pitch mindset is basically to understand what a pitch is, and also to speaking to the issues around the apathy of agency staff about pitching, is to find out, do we, and I'm sure you would agree with me, do you really need to pitch for every business?
No.
I know you have something to say about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was a big advocate of that, so really. And speaking to pitching and the mindset, if you have a process, like you have said, then you would know the amount of pitches you can take in and what you cannot take. Because if you don't have a process, you take, and your people will end up burning out. I always say that it's good to pitch new business, but it's more important to retain the ones that you have. Because it's the same hands you have that are working on the existing business that would pitch, for the new business. And having a standard operating, procedure for pitches helps you know what you can or cannot take.
Sure.
There are pitches that would come in and they'll give you timelines of 1 week for work that would require. And then if you have a procedure, you know that there's no way I can fit in all of this in this, in this time frame. So that actually gives you, it arms you with something to go back to the client with, to make you decide, can we do this or not? And the reason why, because you said, a lot of agency staff don't like it. Because the reason is because most of the time, they have senior management tell them, oh, we need to pitch this, we need this business, because they are looking at the bottom line. And then the guys who are working on it are saying, look, we don't have enough time to do our best on this job. And I'm sure, as you know, what we have done, at least in the recent past, is create our, pitch process, and we stuck by it. And it's sticking by it. At least I know that for 2019, we had over 90% pitch success rate.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. We didn't pitch everything, but everything that we pitched was amazing. So that goes to speak to the fact that, it's tested and trusted. I think it's important to have a, pitch process. And it's also much more important to stick to it, because the moment you keep delivering pitches upon pitches, clients are not crazy people.
Yeah.
One thing I always do is I don't just go back to client and say, oh, this timeline is too short, or I don't have enough information. I break it down to them. This is our process. We do A, B, C, D before we get to Z to pitch to you. There is no way we can fit in it in this time. Could you please extend so that we can do our best? And 80% of the time, they always extend.
Yeah.
So why not do that? I think that is something that's very important for agencies to do.
So I agree with you totally. Funke, let me shock you. I was in a conference last year. I was in a conference with a couple of agency people, advertising agency people, and we're having a side discussion during lunch, I think, or one of those breakout session. And I told a couple of them sitting on the same table with me that the average pitch costs the agency between 1.5 million to 5 million, depending on the scope of the pitch. And most of them were so shocked, because I am not sure they had sat down before to evaluate the cost of a pitch process.
Yeah.
And therein lies the the risks to agencies, because not only are you expending energy, there's also a cost element to it, if you get what I mean. So for instance, your man hours could have been deployed to other assured business, for instance, or you might be missing some other deadlines because of the fact that you're pitching. So if you have things to print, if you have mock-ups to do, research, demos, focus groups, questionnaires, all of those things. And in my analysis, I have come to realize that based on the scope of the pitch and the kind of pitch that agencies get into, it costs them between 1.5 million naira to 5 million naira, to execute an entire pitch process. But I mean, we've spoken a lot about the pitch mindset, the process, and now the interesting part of it, which, I'm sure you have a couple of, and I have a couple of what would count as some of those very notable pitch projects I've been involved with in your life as an agency person.
Actually, even before we get to that, because you were saying something I wanted to ask or say something on top of that, which is the pitfalls to avoid. Because you said, it's not cheap to be part of a pitch. If you're going to do it well, it's not cheap. And you're already investing, you're investing resources, you're investing money into it. So what do you think are the most important pitfalls for people to note, not to avoid? Because like you said, when you mentioned it and some people just sat down and thought about it, that, okay, those pitfalls, because aside money, I know there are a lot, there are a few others that people need to look out for when they're pitching,
See,
so that I'm sure it's not the same one I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, so I don't know what you are thinking because I don't have, but I think basically there are pitfalls that abound in pitching. One of them is the reputation of the client. I'm saying this with all amount of responsibility. You have to be sure that this client is a client that has a reputation for a flawless pitch process. And I'll give you an hypothetical example. There are clients that if you mention their names, boom, they are pitching. A lot of agencies will take it with whatever kind of feeling. That's because they've come to realize that the pitch process for these clients, right, is never that flawless, never that seamless. You never know whether it's going to be done from end to end or whether they are serious about their pitch process. And so it's one fundamental pitfall is be sure of the reputation of the client that is calling for the pitch. And so sometimes you don't have to go into those kind of pitch. I have some clients and I always tell my people, I'm sorry, I don't think we should bother about this pitch, because if you've done the same thing for the same client for 3-4 times and you know that it's inconclusive, let me use that word now. Pitches that are inconclusive means that the client has a reputation. Way back in my early days in advertising, there was this client that was notorious for pitching virtually every 2 years and for virtually every year. And for 5 years in a row, they never changed their agency. They never concluded it, never got back to anybody. So at some point, we asked ourselves, do we need to pitch for this client? So reputation is one. Number two is that you need to know whether it's a pitch that you have capacity to pitch for. There are some pitches that you can tell yourself that this is not a pitch. So I'll give you a typical example. So there are agencies who pitch literally everything, all right? And some of those pitches have no business pitch in it. So there are things outside of your realm. So one, you don't have internal competency. Two, you have not tried to secure partnership or collaboration that helps you stand a chance of winning the pitch because you don't have capacity. And so one, you need to know that you have competency and capacity to pitch for it. Then two, you need to be sure that in terms of your pitching process, that you have a good scoring ratio. So what you call a batting rate. Generally in advertising or pitches generally, it is deemed to be between the neighborhood of 10 to 25% max. Very good agencies score a batting rate of 40%, which is 40% of the pitches. And agencies who score above 40 to 60, 70% are considered like top of the range. So you have to know your batting range and what is responsible for your batting range. Pitfall is, number one, not preparing for the pitch. It does sound very, very mundane that, you should be aware whether you are ready and prepared for the pitch. But you guess what? Some agencies still go into pitches without being ready for it. Not having enough time to do their research. Just let's waltz into there. We have some badass creative work. Our strategy is always like this, but that preparation. I mean, a couple of other stuff. I'm sure you have a couple.
Yeah.
So that I don't.
Yeah, I think another thing that always comes up, we get situations where the moment we're briefed, the first thing that is sent by the client is an NDA. Oh, you're not allowed to share our information. But a lot of people forget to read that and make sure that this NDA is both ways. Or that's more or less what it is, like an NDA or some confidentiality or rights documentation that you need to sign. Because most of what we get is basically protecting the client. Oh, you're not allowed to share the information, one thing. But I think a lot of people should also consider that when you get such documents, you are free to make additions to it. Highlight it and let them know. Make additions to it to say, look, yes, whatever we share at this point is still considered our property, our intellectual property, up until we gain the business, because it has happened before that, we pitched the business, we didn't win it, but then those ideas that you shared, nobody has a monopoly of ideas, granted, but you could tell that this is basically what you are shared in the pitch, and they never got back to you. Even for some clients that never change their agency, but they throw a pitch, to just shake things up a little bit. So I think that is something that's very important. And also to cover costs. I know a lot of people waive it in Nigeria. I've gone for pitch meetings where, all the agencies are brought to the table, and then I'm the only one asking, is there a pitch fee to this? A lot of people don't want to ask because they don't want to step on the toes of the clients.
That's one sensitive, touchy topic amongst agency, client, pitch fee. I'm sure we'll get to a point where we'll discuss that in detail, but it's there. I mean, so it's good to put it out there.
Yes. So like you said, I'll mention two that have been, and the first one that stayed with me was we pitched for Verve. It was InterSwitch. We pitched for Verve. And what stayed with me on this was that from the moment the brief was extremely detailed, and it was obvious that they had a pitch process on their own end as well, which made it seamless and perfect. They sent us a brief and they requested for an understanding of the brief. They wanted to know our understanding of the brief. Upon sharing our understanding of the brief, then they invited us in and shared research data with us. They shared recent trends. They shared trends in the market, their competition, information that we didn't have. And after doing that, they sent us to their research partners who took us through, thousands of data, research that they had done recently. And before we even started the work, we understood the brand. We understood their business objective. We understood what their communication objective was. We understood what the challenge was. We understood what we needed to do. We understood the targets. So it was fantastic. And then after that, they gave us ample time to work on the pitch. And it was a fantastic pitch. We didn't get the business, the incumbents got it, but it stayed with me because it was fantastic. They paid the pitch fee and some pitch fee for that matter. And they were very, very professional about it. Great. So that stayed with me. And I wish every client, can run a pitch like that. They would be surprised at how much fantastic work they will get back, and how well agencies will do. I wish more clients are that way. So the second one was on Nokia. Their process was very organized as well. Got the brief. They came in and they briefed us personally, and during the course of the pitch process, obviously, they had a pitch process on their own end too, so it was quite organized. One thing they did different that I really liked was the fact that they did the agency visits. So they would come in, know your system, know how you work, meet your team, ask questions about your past work, and it felt more personal. A lot of clients would basically just send you a brief. Oh, we know your agency, or they tell you come and present your profile, or just send in your profile. But they came in, wanted to know who we were, how we work, how we, our thinking process. So it made you feel like they really wanted to know a lot. They really want to understand how you work to see if there's a perfect fit. And that's very important, because the moment it's easy to pitch a business and just win it. There's no synergy in the way your clients work and the way you work. Then you would have issues with the account.
Sure.
And I think that was a very good thing, because in doing that, if there's any discrepancies in your processes or in the way you work, that was the time to note it and adjust and adjust accordingly. So those are like two ones that I would speak to. I don't know if you have. I'm sure you have a lot.
So I mean, I do have a lot, but I'll try to stick to just two. I mean, we have time constraints on this podcast. By the way, this podcast, as you know, is Noah's Pod, and
I know.
yeah, let me just rub it out in there. But I think for me, two I would want to use as examples would be one, Cowbell. Cowbell was at that point in time relaunching the brand. The brand had come into the market, taken everybody by storm, and at some point in time began to see a dwindle of a bit in their market share. Because I think at that point in time they had done a price increase and the market responded and the sales, plateaued a bit. So the brand wanted two things: one, relaunch the brand, and two, also to try and see whether they can recover lost grounds as a result of the price increase. So it was a very challenging time for the brand. And why this pitch? Yes, it wasn't probably the biggest pitch in terms of the monetary value that would come along with it, but it was a pitch that had a lot of learnings. One was that it was a pitch that you needed to know the product and how the product connected with the target audience and what the product meant to the target audience and what the client was trying to achieve. That was critical. And I remember this because that was actually the first time that I would be in the pitch presentation and the client literally told you, without saying it, that you have won. Yeah. Because if I remember in the room, somebody had said, wow, we must run this. We must run this. And there and then, I was almost sure that business was coming to us. The learning from that basically is that if you have it right and the product and the brand and your proposition is spot on, then you don't have a problem. This client was, and I'll tell you what I liked about them. It took them less than 3 days to announce the winner. So it was very clear to them that they had found what was going to work with them. Yeah. It took them less than a month, about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, from when the winner was declared to when we had to go into production, from where we had to break the campaign in about a month. So for me, that was a big pitch process. I'll speak also briefly on, I think I'll leave the other one. I'll speak to Unified Payment for their product pay attitude. Why I'm saying this is because there were a lot of key learnings. First and foremost, we got the what do you call it? We got the brief and we're supposed to respond in like a week and a half. And we told the client, sorry.
10 days.
10 days, remember. And we told the client, sorry, we can't deliver quality work for you in 10 days. And client said they didn't have time, basically. But the funny thing was that, very unusual, the client came back and said, okay, we will give you this time. And I must give credit to that client because they took a very good decision, took a gamble, extended our time, and they gave us eventually about, 3 weeks?
3 weeks
to work on it. And eventually we went on, presented, we won, and the client said, okay, so this is what you guys really meant because every other person didn't really come out this well. And so the key lesson was from us to insist on the time that you need to do quality work. To the clients is basically, if you want quality work, then you have to give them good time to work. But again, there was fantastic creative from the house of Noazak at that point in time. Yeah. I'll rest this topic a bit and let's go to something less feisty, more interesting. Yeah. And I don't know, choose something that you want us to jump onto next.
Because we're running out of time, I think one thing we might touch on to round this off is, key things to note on how to run better pitches that work for both
agency and the client
side, because that would be the whole purpose of this, so that to take that out. And so I can speak to agency side. I'll let you, since you were wanting.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'll let you speak to the client side. First and foremost, like in the last example you had mentioned, is time. Time is, if you're going to do good work, we all know that we need time to work. So do not be afraid to ask for more time. It is very, very important. Detail your process and ask for more time. If it's meant to be, they will give you time.
Sure.
And if you really have to do it, then ask for help. So, because I've mentioned time, and I've said, ask for help. Like you said, if it's not your key competency, partner with somebody in doing it. It doesn't mean because, you can't do everything on the brief. Doesn't mean you should turn it down. Look for a partner, work on it, and, you can start something fantastic from there. Also, do not be shy of the pitch fee. There's no, because at the end of the day, like you said, it takes a lot of money. You're going to spend money to do this work. There's man hours, there's research, there's demos to be done, there's mock-ups and things that would be done. Ask for a pitch fee. It is supported by APCON. There is actually a regulatory body behind it. There's an actual pitch fee standard for the industry. You can ask for that at least at the minimum. If they want confirmation, they can confirm it. But the worst thing that would happen is they would say no. But there's nothing wrong in asking for the pitch fee. And I think I mentioned 2 more things. Understanding of the brief is very, very important, because you have a situation where this is what you think the client wants, and that is somehow different from what the client actually wants. A lot of clients, in some cases, do not even know how to express what they want on the brief. And when you share an understanding of the brief, which is one of the things that will also help you buy time, in cases when you need time, when you share an understanding of the brief with your clients and they sign off on it, that actually helps you know that, okay, this is what we need to do. Exactly. And, you can tackle it, head on, as opposed to going around in circles and wasting so much time and not succeeding. And for the last thing I'm going to mention, your test of capability is your strategy on everything that you do on the pitch. And to do that, you need research, you need insight. It is very important your planners are they are the key people on not just the creative. Everybody's key, but then at the forefront of the pitch, it is very important, because whatever they give you, it is what everything rests on. It is the backbone of of your pitch, your creative, even your budgeting, and whatever it is that you need to do, rest on the research and the insights that they provide. So those are the few things that I would mention. I'll let you speak to
okay, from the client side. Client. Let's start with, do not invite every agency to your pitch. Waste of time.
and give them 15 minutes each.
Waste of your time. It doesn't work. Will never work. That's number 1. Number 2 is, always do your research. Do your due diligence. Find out the agencies that have the right competence for the kind of product or brand that you're dealing, or the category. That's number 2. Then number 3 is, go out and sit down or visit the agency. Find out whether this agency has the DNA to work for you. Yeah. Find out whether there is compatibility between you and the agency, and also find out whether there is that chemistry between the guys who are working on the agency side and your own side. Number 3 is, I know it's a big issue in this country. If you have to use a professional third party to do selection for you, use the professional, because you may not know all of this. Then I would like to close by saying, make up your mind on what the outcomes are. And I'll tell you what I mean with this in just 3 key. Do not ask the agencies to come and pitch a second round of pitching. It doesn't really work. And I've seen this. One, you waste your time, then it makes decision making more difficult. If 4 agencies have presented to you, try to go with the agency with the best idea and blend it to what you want. Don't say, come for second round of pitch, third round of pitch. This is how to waste your time and agency time. And I'm sure that hopefully our colleagues in the advertising business and our friends from the client side will be able to learn 1 or 2 things. It's not a platform that you can be very exhaustive. Obviously, there we could talk about pitching and pitching process for another 2 hours. But yes, we have to round this up. So closing shots, because my closing shot is basically that pitching for me is adrenaline rush for me. Oh,
well, for me, actually, yes, it's more or less the same, because it's an opportunity to just do something new, something fantastic, and blow some people away. People who have never seen you. So that there's nothing like that reaction on their faces when you're done, or when you're in the middle of it, like they're getting another, like, oh my God. So yes, you are right. the opportunity to blow people away. It's always welcome.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.